The woman sits in Mama Ifoma's courtyard, writing in a small journal. Her expression is focused. Chickens peck the ground nearby. Mama Ifoma watches her with quiet pride. The following morning arrived with the distant toll of the village bell. It was Eid market day in Adaeze, and the dusty path that led to the village square soon teemed with voices, laughter, and the sharp calls of traders selling their wares. Adaeze walked slowly toward the market, a raffia basket in hand. Her wrapper was tied tighter than usual to support her belly, and her steps were deliberate, careful. She had only a few naira in the small cloth purse tucked into her waistband, but she hoped to find enough to buy okra and a little gari. As she neared the market stalls, she felt the first eyes on her. "See her," one woman whispered, nudging another. "Chuka's girl. The one he left with belly." Adaeze kept her head high, her eyes fixed on a woman selling dried fish. "Shameless," another voice muttered nearby. "Even in this condition, she still comes to market like nothing happened." She paused at the fish seller's table, her hand trembling slightly. "Please, Mama," she said quietly, "how much for that small piece?" Mama looked at her with pity. "Take it, Adaeze. No need to pay." "No, I will pay," Adaeze replied, reaching into her purse. But Mama shook her head firmly. "Keep your money. I remember when your mother used to buy from me. She was a good woman. May her soul rest in peace." Adaeze took the fish and gave a nod of gratitude, blinking away tears. "Thank you, Mama. I won't forget this kindness." As she turned to leave, a familiar voice rang out. "Adaeze." She turned and saw Obi, Chuka's cousin, weaving through the crowd toward her. His shirt was stained with palm oil, and he carried a sack of yams over one shoulder. "Obi," she said wearily, unsure of his intentions. "I heard you were here," he said, catching his breath. I wanted to say sorry. For everything." She frowned. "Did Chuka send you?" "No. He hasn't spoken to me since he left. He's in Asaba now, trying to start some business. He doesn't even ask about you." Adaeze's face hardened. "Then what do you want from me, Obi?" He sighed. "Nothing. I just thought you should know. My mother, Mama, she says you can come and stay with us if things get too hard. She still sees you as family." For a moment, Adaeze didn't know what to say. Her pride wrestled with her pain. "Tell her thank you." "But I'm managing." Obi nodded. "All right. But please don't suffer alone. There are still people who care." With that, he disappeared back into the market crowd. Adaeze stood frozen for a moment, the sun burning hot on her shoulders. Just then, she felt a sharp pain in her side. It was sudden, enough to make her gasp and clutch her stomach. A woman nearby rushed to her. "Are you all right?" "I think so," Adaeze muttered, steadying herself. "Just the baby kicking hard. Maybe you should sit down." "I'll be fine. I just need to go home." The walk back to her compound felt longer than ever. By the time she reached her door, she was sweating and trembling. She collapsed onto the mat, breathing heavily. In the quiet that followed, she whispered to herself, "I won't break. I won't. No matter what they say. No matter how they look at me." Outside, a gentle breeze rustled the mango tree near her compound. Inside, Adaeze lay still, the little piece of dried fish beside her, her eyes fixed on the ceiling of her hut. In the silence, her child moved again, softly this time, like a reassurance. She closed her eyes and whispered, "We will survive this. Together." Nightfall in Adaeze came suddenly, as though someone had drawn a thick curtain across the sky. The lantern in Adaeze's hut flickered with the uncertain wind, casting long shadows on the mud walls. The air smelled of rain, heavy and expectant. Adaeze sat on her mat, slowly peeling the small okra she had managed to buy earlier that day. Her fingers moved with practiced ease, but her mind was far away, swimming in a sea of fears she never spoke aloud. A sharp gust of wind slammed the door open. She gasped and rushed to push it shut, leaning her full weight against it as the rain began to pour. Thunder cracked like a whip above the village. The roof of her hut, patched with old palm fronds, trembled under the onslaught. "God, not tonight," she whispered, staring up at the ceiling. "Please, not tonight." Water began to drip from the corners of the roof. First one drop, then two, then a steady stream. Adaeze scrambled to move her mat and cover her small calabash of water. She placed her food aside and grabbed the only basin she had to catch the leaking water. Outside, the storm raged like a wounded beast. The wind howled through the trees, and thunder boomed so loud it shook the very earth. Suddenly, another sharp pain gripped her lower abdomen. This one was worse than what she had felt earlier in the market. Her body tensed. She dropped to her knees, gripping her belly. "No," she cried out. "It's too early. Not now, not like this." Her voice was lost in the storm. She crawled to the door and pushed it open. Rain slapped her face, soaking her instantly. She looked around, desperate, hoping someone might still be awake. "Mama Ifoma," she shouted into the darkness. No answer. She staggered into the rain, barefoot, stumbling through the mud toward Mama Ifoma's hut. The pain surged again, worse this time. She screamed, falling to the ground. Then, faintly, a lantern light appeared through the curtain of rain. A voice cried out, "Who is there?" "It's me," Adaeze gasped. "Please help me." Mama Ifoma, wrapped in a faded shawl, came running. "Adaeze. Chimo. Are you in labor?" "I don't know," she cried. "The pain. It's too much. Come, my daughter. Hold on to me." With great effort, Mama Ifoma helped her to her feet and guided her through the mud and rain into her own hut. The fire inside was still burning low, the warmth wrapping around them like a thin blanket. "Lie down here," Mama Ifoma said, clearing a spot quickly and placing cloths beneath her. "Breathe, Adaeze. Just breathe." "I'm scared," Adaeze wept. "I don't have anything. I'm not ready." "You are ready," Mama Ifoma said firmly, kneeling beside her. "Because you are a mother already. And mothers do what must be done, even when they are afraid." The storm outside continued to rage, but inside the hut, a different storm was brewing, one of pain, of life, of love. Time passed slowly. Hours felt like years. But just before dawn, as the first light crept across the hills of Oreophyte, a cry broke through the silence. A baby's cry. Mama Ifoma laughed through her tears. "It's a girl, Adaeze. A strong, beautiful girl." Adaeze, soaked in sweat and tears, reached out weakly. The baby was placed in her arms, wrapped in a warm cloth. "She's mine," Adaeze whispered, her voice trembling. "My baby." The child's eyes were shut tight, her fists clenched, her cry strong and determined, just like her mother. As the rain began to ease, Adaeze looked up at the leaking roof, the dim lantern light, and the tired woman beside her. "Thank you, Mama," she said, barely able to speak. "You did it, Adaeze. You brought light into the darkness." In the distance, a cock crowed. Morning had come. And with it, the beginning of a new story. The rains had passed, leaving behind a cool, clean earth. The leaves glistened in the morning sun, and the air carried the sweet scent of wet soil and hibiscus flowers. Inside Mama Ifoma's hut, Adaeze lay with her baby girl cradled against her chest, both of them wrapped in peace. The baby was small, yet fierce, her grip tight whenever she curled her tiny fingers around Adaeze's thumb. Her skin was the color of warm honey, and her little nose twitched every time a fly came too close. It had been 3 days since the stormy night that changed everything. "She looks like you," Mama Ifoma said, sitting beside Adaeze with a bowl of hot pepper soup. "The same eyes. The same mouth." Adaeze smiled weakly. "I don't know what to name her yet." "Well, that is the next thing, my daughter. You must give her a name with meaning. A name that will carry her through this hard world. Adaeze stared at the small bundle in her arms, her heart heavy with both love and uncertainty. She came during the storm, when everything was falling apart. But she cried like the sky itself owed her something. Like she came to challenge the pain. Then give her a name that reflects that spirit. I want to call her Chimamanda, Adaeze said after a long silence. Because my God will never fail me. Even in the storm. Mama Ifoma nodded, her eyes glistening. A strong name. She will grow into it. Later that afternoon, a few village women came by, bringing small gifts, a bundle of baby clothes, a calabash of pap, some dried herbs for healing. They gathered under the tree in front of Mama Ifoma's compound, for the informal naming. Chimamanda, they repeated together, smiling and touching the baby's feet. Welcome to this world. Obi came too, carrying a small pot of palm oil and some roasted groundnuts. He stood awkwardly near the doorway, unsure if he was welcome. I heard the news, he said softly to Adaeze. She's beautiful. Adaeze nodded, adjusting Chimamanda in her arms. Thank you, Obi. He hesitated, then added, You did it, Adaeze. You brought her here, even with everything against you. I'm sorry that my cousin left you to face it alone. She looked up at him, her voice calm but firm. Chuka made his choice. And now I've made mine. This child will know love, even if it's only mine. You won't always be alone, Obi said quietly. Some of us are still here. His words hung in the air, uncertain, delicate. That night, after everyone had gone, Adaeze lay with Chimamanda by her side. The baby stirred, her tiny mouth searching for milk, and Adaeze guided her gently to her breast. She sang softly, a lullaby her mother used to sing to her as a child. Sleep, my child, the moon watches you. The stars whisper your name. The world may be loud, but my arms are quiet. And in them you are safe. Tears rolled down her cheeks as she sang. Not from sorrow this time, but from a new kind of ache. One that came with love too deep to name. Outside, the village was still. Crickets sang. A distant drum beat echoed from a neighboring compound, someone celebrating a new yam harvest, perhaps. But in this quiet corner of Oreifite, a different celebration had taken place. A mother had named her daughter. A child had claimed her place in the world. And a new chapter had begun. The early morning sun stretched lazily across Oreifite, drawing long gold lines through the banana trees. Birds chirped noisily from their perches, but inside Mama Ifoma's compound, the day began with silence. Adaeze stood outside, baby Chimamanda tied to her back with a soft, faded wrapper. Her body was still sore, and her mind even more so. She was grinding Aband0ned seeds with a stone, her hands moving in slow circles. The baby had barely slept during the night, her small whimpers waking Adaeze each time she dozed off. Despite everything, Adaeze worked, because hunger had a way of demanding attention louder than grief ever could. You should be resting, Adaeze, Mama Ifoma said as she emerged from her hut, carrying a bundle of firewood. Adaeze shook her head. I can't rest while we have nothing to eat. I must cook something. Even if it's just soup without meat. Mama Ifoma sighed and knelt beside her. Your stubbornness. No, Mama. It's what is keeping me alive. They sat together, grinding and preparing the little they had, until the soup pot finally bubbled gently on the fire. The smell brought a sense of comfort, though there was no swallow or rice to go with it. Still, it was warm. And warm food could soften a hard day. Later that afternoon, Adaeze made her way to the local bakery. Her neighbor, Mazi Ugo, had told her they sometimes gave out old bread that couldn't be sold. She didn't like the idea of begging, but her baby needed more than breast milk. She needed strength. The bakery sat on the edge of the village, its metal roof glinting in the sun. Children played around it, chasing each other with sticks and laughter. Adaeze adjusted Chimamanda on her back and stepped inside the warm, yeast-scented building. Mama Chuka, she called out softly. A large woman emerged from behind the counter, wiping flour from her face. Hey, Adaeze, what are you doing here? I heard there might be some leftover bread. I can sweep or wash trays in exchange. Mama Chuka eyed her coldly. So now you come begging? When you were following Chuka around, you didn't think of where food would come from. Adaeze stood tall, despite the burn in her chest. I am not begging. I offered to work. That's what I came for. You're carrying my grandson, yet you shame us by walking around like a homeless girl. This child is not your concern, Adaeze said calmly. Chuka made his choice. I am making mine. Mama Chuka turned away with a grunt and walked back into the kitchen. A few moments later she returned with a small loaf in a paper wrapper. She tossed it onto the counter. Take it and leave. Adaeze picked it up, her pride scraping raw against her hunger. Thank you, she said quietly and walked out. As she stepped into the sun, her eyes welled up with tears. But Chimamanda stirred and let out a soft sound, a kind of sigh. Adaeze looked over her shoulder and whispered, We will eat today, my love. Even if the world turns its back on us. Back at the compound, she tore the bread into tiny pieces and fed Chimamanda with her fingers after softening it with pap. The baby cooed, her eyes bright, her mouth smacking in satisfaction. See? Adaeze said, a small smile breaking through. We are still here. That night, as the baby slept soundly beside her, Adaeze stared at the thatched ceiling above and whispered into the dark. I don't know how tomorrow will be. But I survived today. And sometimes, that was enough. The days after Adaeze's return from the bakery passed with slow exhaustion. Each morning began with the same routine, waking early, bathing Chimamanda with cold water drawn from the clay pot, tying her securely to her back, and searching for odd jobs around the village that might fetch her a little money or food. One hot afternoon, as Adaeze pounded bitterleaf behind Mama Ifoma's compound, a voice called out from the main path. It was a deep voice, one she hadn't heard in many months. She froze, her pestle hovering midair. Is Adaeze here? The voice asked. She wiped her sweaty forehead and stepped out slowly. And there he stood, Chuka. He was leaner than before, his skin darker from the sun, his eyes restless. He wore jeans that sagged at the knees and a worn t-shirt with the words "No food for lazy man" stretched across the front. His eyes fell on the child in her arms, and something unreadable crossed his face. Adaeze, he said softly. She felt her chest tighten but stood tall. Why are you here, Chuka? He hesitated, glancing at the baby. I heard you had the child. I wanted to see her. You heard? After how many moons you heard? You left without a word, Chuka. No letter. No money. Not even a message. I was trying to get work in Asaba. Things were hard. I thought if I could make it first, I'd come back for you. Adaeze scoffed. You didn't think about me when you left me crying on the floor of my father's compound. Or when your mother spat on my doorstep. But now, you want to act like you care. He looked down embarrassed. I made mistakes. You made choices, she snapped. And now I've made mine too. The baby stirred, sensing her mother's anger. Adaeze adjusted her gently, patting her back. She's beautiful, Chuka said after a long pause. She's strong, Adaeze corrected. And she got that without you? There was silence between them for a while, broken only by the distant clucking of chickens, and the whisper of dry leaves. I want to help, Chuka finally said. Maybe give you some money, buy her clothes. We don't need charity, Adaeze said quickly. I'm not giving charity. I'm trying to take responsibility. Too late, Chuka. We begged. We suffered. We and you were not there. Chuka shifted uncomfortably. I thought maybe we could try again. For the child's sake. Adaeze stared at him, long and hard. For her sake, I'll raise her with truth, not illusions. If you want to see her, you'll do it with respect. Not as a man trying to fix his guilt. He looked away, ashamed. Can I at least hold her? Adaeze paused, then slowly unwrapped the cloth from her back and lifted Chimamanda into his arms. The baby blinked up at her father, her tiny hands waving in the air. Chuka smiled, a mixture of awe and regret washing over him. She has your eyes. She has my heart, Adaeze said softly. So don't break it again. After a few minutes, she took the baby back. You can visit her, if that's truly what you want. But understand something, Chuka, I am not waiting for you anymore. I've already started building without you. He nodded slowly. I understand. As he turned to leave, Adaeze called out, Tell your mother she doesn't have a right to shame a girl she once welcomed into her home. And if she ever wants to see her granddaughter, she better come with clean hands and a clean heart. Chuka didn't reply. He walked away, his shoulders heavy with the weight of choices too late to undo. That night, as Adaeze bathed Chimamanda and sang to her, she felt something shift inside her, not anger, not hatred, but release. He had come. She had stood her ground. And now, she could move forward. Oreophyte Market was a hive of noise and motion. From the scent of dried fish to the cries of women hawking tomatoes and pepper, it was a place where life, hard and vibrant, played out in the open. For Adaeze, though the market had become more than a center of trade, it was a battlefield. With Chimamanda tied tightly to her back and her worn slippers slapping against the hot earth, Adaeze made her way through the stalls, clutching a tray of peeled oranges on her head. Her eyes scanned the crowd, hoping to catch the attention of someone who might be tempted by the tangy sweetness of her wares. Orange. Sweet orange. Just 5 naira. Make you cool your mouth. She had learned how to cry her trade like the other women, but her voice lacked the seasoned confidence. Still, each orange she sold meant another meal, another evening of pap for her baby. By noon, the sun beat down so harshly that her wrapper clung to her skin, soaked in sweat. Her tray was still half full. She stopped beside a small kiosk and leaned against a pole, her legs trembling from hours of walking. "It be like say hunger don't catch you well," came a voice from behind. Adaeze turned to find Mama Aka, the stout marketwoman, who sold provisions and was known both for her tongue and her generosity. "I'm okay, Mama," Adaeze said quickly. "Lie for yourself, not for me," the woman replied, squinting at her. "You're nursing a child and walking under the sun with oranges. Your eyes don't day hollow like person way sleep inside hunger." Adaeze shifted uncomfortably. "It's just for a few more hours. I need to sell everything before I go." "How many you done sell since morning?" 6. Mama Aka hissed. 6. You self. "I just need to feed my baby," Adaeze replied, her voice almost a whisper. The woman was quiet for a moment, then turned and went into her store. She returned with a small polythene bag and a bottle of cold zobo. "Take," she said. "There's rice and beans inside. You and your baby need strength." Adaeze's eyes welled with tears. "Mama, I don't have." "I didn't ask you for money," Mama Aka interrupted. "When I born my Aka, I breastfed that boy with tears and curses. Hunger almost. I know what this life can do. Eat first, then come and help me wash bitter leaf later if you like." Adaeze held the food close to her chest. "Thank you. God bless you. Now only God day see everything," the woman said, waving her off. "Go and eat before you fall down here." Adaeze found a quiet corner near the edge of the market and sat under the shade of a mango tree. She untied Chimamanda, laying her gently across her lap, and opened the bag. The aroma hit her like a memory of a better time. She took a bite, savoring every grain like it was gold. As she fed her child a little of the mashed beans, a feeling of deep gratitude settled over her. Later that evening, Adaeze returned to Mama Aka's stall and helped wash Bitterleaf until her fingers turned green. She didn't complain. She only listened about Aka's stubbornness, the price of gari, and how the market used to be more honest before girls started using powder to sell pepper. When the sun finally began to sink, Adaeze packed her tray and tied her baby once again. "Come again tomorrow," Mama Aka said, handing her a small nylon of uncooked rice. "And bring your child. Let me bless her." As Adaeze walked home, the sky orange above the hills of Oreophyte, she whispered to Chimamanda. "There are still good people in this world, my child. They may be few, but they are there. Like stars in a dark sky." And that night, she slept a little fuller, her baby coiled beside her, while the stars blinked silently above, bearing witness to a mother's quiet triumph. It was a breezy morning in Oreophyte, and the rustle of the palm trees whispered promises Adaeze dared not believe. She sat on a low stool just outside Mama Ifoma's compound, watching Chimamanda play, with an old spoon and a broken plastic cup. The baby was growing fast, already trying to stand, gripping whatever she could find for support. Her giggles, like tiny bells, brought warmth to the compound. But Adaeze's mind was not on her daughter's laughter. It was on the primary school nearby, where she had once sat in a classroom with a slate board and chalk between her fingers. Her dream of becoming a teacher had been washed away the day her father and her mother sold their last goat to pay hospital bills. That dream had been buried under years of hardship, then further sunk under the shame of her pregnancy. But as she watched Chimamanda wobble and smile, a fire lit inside her again. "I want more for her," Adaeze whispered. "More will not come by just wanting," Mama Ifoma said behind her. She had been listening. Adaeze turned, startled. "I know, Mama. But how can I give her what I never had?" Mama Ifoma came to sit beside her. "You had strength. That's more than most. I want her to go to school. Real school. I want her to wear uniform, carry a bag. Not oranges on her head." Mama Ifoma nodded. "Then we must find a way. The church sometimes supports young mothers through the Women's Guild. I will speak with Mummy Chinyere." Adaeze blinked. Would they even listen to someone like me? Why not? You are a mother. You are willing. That is enough to knock on their door. That afternoon, with Chimamanda tied on her back and a heart pounding in her chest, Adaeze walked beside Mama Ifoma to St. Peter's Catholic Church. The red brick building stood tall in the center of Oreophyte, its bell already ringing for evening mass. They waited under the mango tree as choir members and women in white lace wrappers passed by, exchanging greetings. Then Mummy Chinyere, the president of the Women's Guild, emerged. She was a tall woman, with a commanding presence, her wrapper crisp and her blouse gleaming in the sunlight. Her eyes narrowed slightly as she spotted Adaeze. "She is the girl," Mama Ifoma began quickly. "She fell on hard times, but she wants to start again. For her child." Mummy Chinyere's eyes remained fixed on Adaeze. "What do you want from us?" "Support," Adaeze said, standing straight. "Not money. I want to go back to school. I'll clean the church compound, scrub the pews, wash the altar cloths, anything, if it means I can learn again." Silence. Then the woman spoke. "There is an evening literacy program, run by the parish. Mostly for widows and older women, but we do not turn people away. You can start there." Adaeze's breath caught. "Truly?" "Yes. But you must be serious. We don't waste time on half-hearted souls." "I'm not half anything," Adaeze replied quietly. "I am whole, even if broken." Mummy Chinyere stared at her for a moment longer, then nodded. "Come Monday evening. 7 o'clock. As they walked back home, Adaeze clutched the information like treasure. The road back to school was small, but it was a road nonetheless. That night, after feeding Chimamanda and laying her on a raffia mat, Adaeze sat in the doorway of the hut and traced letters into the sand with a stick. A. B. C, D, over and over again. She whispered the sounds beneath her breath until sleep crept in and her fingers slowed. The stars blinked above Adaeze, and in their glow, a forgotten dream stirred awake, tender, trembling, and still possible. Monday evening arrived faster than Adaeze expected. The air in Adaeze was still, humid, and filled with the smells of charcoal and burning firewood. The distant sound of the village bell marked the 6th hour of the day. Adaeze's heart pounded like a drum in her chest. She had tied Chimamanda snugly on her back, packed a small bottle of water, and worn her cleanest wrapper, even if it had a tear near the seam. Mama Ifoma blessed her forehead with palm oil and said, "You go as a student tonight. Walk like one. Talk like one." Adaeze nodded, barely able to speak. As she approached the small block of classrooms behind St. Peter's Church, her breath caught. There were already women seated on wooden benches, murmuring to one another. Some were elderly, their backs bent with years of labor. Others were middle-aged market women, with baskets still full of unsold wares at their feet. She hesitated by the doorway. "Come inside," said a kind voice. Adaeze turned to see Sister Justina, a young nun with large glasses and a soft face, smiling at her. "I'm Adaeze," she stammered. "We've been expecting you," the nun said. "Sit. Don't be shy. All of us here came back to learning with trembling hands." Adaeze stepped inside and found a place near the corner, careful not to disturb Chimamanda, who had already begun to drift to sleep. The room smelled of chalk and dust, and the cracked blackboard bore faint outlines of past lessons. Sister Justina stood at the front of the class, holding a piece of chalk. "We are here to reclaim what life tried to steal from us," she said, her voice calm but strong. "Whether you stopped at primary 1 or never held a pen before, know that learning is still your right. Tonight, we begin with letters." Adaeze watched as the nun drew letters on the board. A, apple. B, ball. C, cat. Then she handed out sheets of lined paper and pencils, and walked slowly among the women, helping them hold their pencils properly. Adaeze's hand trembled as she wrote the first letter, A. It was crooked, shaky, almost childlike, but it was hers. By the time they reached G, her eyes stung with tears. Sister Justina paused beside her and smiled. "You're doing well." "I never thought I would sit in a classroom again," Adaeze whispered. "Now you are not just sitting, you are rising." At break time, a few of the women introduced themselves. One was called Aband0ned. She had 10 grandchildren, but still wanted to learn to write her name. Another, Ngozi, had run a provision store for years but felt ashamed that her son had to read price tags for her. They laughed together, shared roasted groundnuts, and compared how sore their fingers felt from writing. This is not just school, Adaeze thought, it is healing. As the class ended that night, Sister Justina gave them homework to write the alphabet 3 times before the next lesson. Adaeze walked back home under the moonlight, Chimamanda resting peacefully against her. The village was quiet, except for the hoots of owls and the rhythmic chorus of frogs in the swamp. When she reached Mama Ifoma's hut, she sat by the firelight, pulled out her paper, and traced the letters again and again. Her pencil was dull, her fingers ached, but she smiled. In that moment, she was no longer just the poor girl who had fallen. She was a student, a mother, a fighter, and she was learning to rise, one letter at a time. The next few weeks moved like a river after the rains, fast, full, and sometimes turbulent. Adaeze continued to attend night school with quiet determination. Each evening, she would leave Chimamanda with Mama Ifoma and hurry to class, clutching her pencil like it was her passport to another life. She had begun writing her name. Adaeze Shikodi. At first it came out shaky and uneven, but with each class it grew clearer, firmer, just like her resolve. Sister Justina had even given her a small notebook, which Adaeze guarded like treasure. One afternoon, while returning from the market with a basket of vegetables on her head, Adaeze heard whispers as she passed a group of women sitting under an almond tree. "Now that girl way get bow for street," one of them muttered. "She still dey carry her shame up and down. Imagine, going to school at night with old women." Adaeze kept walking, her heart pounding but her head high. She had long stopped reacting to the judgmental stares of the village women. But sometimes, their words still hurt like stones thrown in the dark. As she reached the compound gate, she saw Chuka again. He was standing by the neem tree near Mama Ifoma's fence, his eyes scanning the ground like a guilty child waiting for a beating. Adaeze sighed. "What do you want now?" "I brought this," he said, holding out a small plastic bag. "It's milk and pap. For the baby." She looked at it, then at him. "You think this will make up for everything?" "No," he replied softly. "But I want to do something, even if it's small." Adaeze hesitated, then took the bag without a word. Chimamanda was growing fast, and food was never enough. Still, she didn't let Chuka think he had earned forgiveness. "You should also tell your mother that I don't need her curses. Let her keep her bitterness to herself." "She's sick," Chuka said quietly. "That's why I came back. She's asking to see the baby." Adaeze folded her arms. "She called my unborn child a curse." "I know. But maybe this child is the blessing she needs now." Silence hung between them. In that moment, Adaeze didn't know what was heavier, her pride or her pain. "I will think about it," she said finally. "But understand this, Chuka, I am not trying to be part of your story anymore. I'm building a new one." Chuka nodded. "I understand." That night, in her room lit only by the moon filtering through the cracks in the mud wall, Adaeze opened her notebook and stared at the blank page. She thought of her past, the whispers, the shame, the loneliness. And then she looked at Chimamanda, who lay beside her, smiling in her sleep. Adaeze picked up her pencil and wrote, "I was broken, but I am not ruined. I was abandoned, but I am not alone. I am rising. For her. For me." Tears slipped down her cheeks, silent and slow, not from sadness, but from healing. In the distance, the church bell rang for evening prayers. A soft wind blew through the window, and the stars above Oreophyte blinked gently, as though nodding in agreement with every word she wrote. The next morning, Adaeze woke to the sound of birds chirping, and Mama Ifoma's hoe striking the earth behind the hut. Chimamanda stirred beside her, rubbing her tiny fists against her cheeks. The child had begun to babble, her sound slowly shaping into something close to Mama. Each time she heard it, Adaeze's heart grew stronger. But today was different. The memory of Chuka's request still lingered like smoke. His mother wanted to see Chimamanda. That thought alone unsettled her more than she cared to admit. As she prepared pap, her mind wandered back to the day Madame Chinyere, Chuka's mother, had confronted her in the market while she was 7 months pregnant. "I warned you, Adaeze. My son will not marry you. You think this is Nollywood?" The older woman had shouted, drawing the attention of everyone. Adaeze had said nothing that day, too ashamed to meet the eyes of the traders she once greeted as family. Now that same woman wanted to see her granddaughter. "Forgiveness is not for them," Mama Ifoma had told her. "It is for your own healing." By noon, Adaeze strapped Chimamanda to her back and tied a fresh wrapper. Her palms were moist with nerves, but her spirit was firm. She stopped at a local provision store to buy Lucozade and a few fruits. She couldn't go empty-handed. Chuka met her at the narrow junction that led to their family compound. "She's inside," he said, pointing toward the mud house with the zinc roof now rusted from years of neglect. "She's been asking about the baby all morning." Adaeze followed him silently. Inside the dim room, Madame Chinyere sat on a mat, her head wrapped in a scarf. Her face, once full and loud with judgment, now looked thinner, pale, humbled by illness and maybe regret. Her eyes met Adaeze's, and for a moment, neither woman said a word. Then Madame Chinyere's gaze fell on Chimamanda. That's her?" she asked, her voice cracking. Adaeze untied the baby and gently lowered her onto the mat. Chimamanda stared curiously at the woman, then giggled and reached for her scarf. The old woman's lips trembled. "She looks like Chuka when he was small. Especially the eyes." "She is my daughter," Adaeze said softly. "And she will not grow up knowing shame." "I said terrible things," the older woman murmured, still watching the baby. "I was scared. Ashamed. Of what the village would say. I thought you were ruining his future." "I was ruined long before him," Adaeze said, her voice calm but strong. "But I chose to survive." There was silence again. Then Madame Chinyere reached out a trembling hand and touched Chimamanda's small fingers. "I don't have much time left," she whispered. "But if you can allow it, I want her to know she has another grandmother." Adaeze watched the woman's frail hand, her withered face, the desperation that had replaced pride. "Maybe one day," she said. "When she's old enough to understand forgiveness." Madame Chinyere's eyes filled with tears. "You are a stronger woman than I ever was." As Adaeze stood to leave, Chuka handed her an envelope. "It's not much. Just something I've been saving. For her." She hesitated, then took it without a word. Not for herself, but for the child who deserved more than bitterness between two wounded families. That night, as she prepared to attend her evening class, Adaeze sat with Chimamanda under the moonlight. "You met your grandmother today," she said softly. "She didn't hold you the day you were born, but she held your hand today. That is something." She packed her notebook, tied her scarf, and began the familiar walk toward the church classroom, her baby safe with Mama Ifoma. The path ahead was still long, still full of shadows, but Adaeze was no longer walking alone. She walked with forgiveness, with purpose, with hope. And in Oreophyte, hope was a rare and powerful thing. The evening wind in Oreophyte carried the scent of dust and ripe mangoes. Adaeze walked steadily toward the parish classroom, her notebook pressed to her chest. It had been a week since her visit to Madame Chinyere. The encounter had left something unfamiliar in her spirit, peace, perhaps, or the early stirrings of it. At school, Sister Justina had begun teaching them numbers. Simple arithmetic. Addition and subtraction. Adaeze, once scared of math like a thief fears the night, found herself fascinated. One basket of oranges has 7 fruits. You sell 3. How many remain? Sister Justina asked the class. Adaeze scribbled quickly, her answer among the first to be read aloud. 4, she said. Very good, the nun beamed. You're sharp, Adaeze. What stopped you from going further before? Adaeze looked down at her paper. Life, she said simply. After class, Sister Justina pulled her aside. I want to tell you something. Yes, sister. There is a teacher training program in Newi. They're taking women with basic literacy. It's for community teaching, primary 1 and 2. With your progress, I think you can qualify. Adaeze's eyes widened. Me? A teacher? Yes. But it's not easy. Classes are twice a week. Transportation, books. It will take sacrifice. I don't have anything, she whispered. But you have purpose, the nun replied. And that is more than most people ever hold. That night, Adaeze didn't sleep. She sat outside under the moonlight, Chimamanda dozing in her lap. Her pencil hovered over her notebook. For the first time, she didn't write letters or numbers. She wrote a prayer. God, I don't know if you still listen to girls like me. But if you do, help me teach. Help me raise her with strength and sense. Let my scars not be wasted. Just then, Mama Ifoma emerged, carrying a half-burnt candle. You're not sleeping? She asked. Adaeze shook her head. My mind is full. Mama Ifoma sat beside her and placed the candle between them. Its flame flickered gently, casting soft shadows on their faces. This candle, Mama Ifoma said, was given to me when my husband died. The priest said, let this remind you that even the smallest light is stronger than darkness. Adaeze stared at it. I've never told you thank you, Mama, she said. You don't need to. But I must. You gave me a place when the world gave me shame. Mama Ifoma looked at her with quiet pride. You came with more than a child. You came with courage. Tears welled in Adaeze's eyes. Sister Justina says I might become a teacher. In Newi. Mama Ifoma didn't flinch. Then you will. But the transport. And Chimamanda. We will find a way. We always do. Later, as the candle burned low and the village slept, Adaeze wrapped her baby in a cloth and whispered, your mother is going to teach, my child. I will stand before a class one day and call out names, just as they once called mine in shame. But this time it will be different. Above them, the stars blinked again, watching, listening, blessing. In Oreophyte, where pain once had the loudest voice, a whisper now carried, you are more than what broke you. And in the soft glow of a dying candle a teacher was born. The next morning in Oreophyte began with the bleating of goats and the distant call of a town crier announcing an upcoming sanitation day. Adaeze sat on the veranda, feeding Chimamanda mashed yam and vegetable. Her eyes were swollen from lack of sleep, but her spirit remained focused. A teacher. That word had danced in her mind all night like a song she was afraid to sing too loudly. Mama Ifoma joined her with a calabash of hot pap. We need to talk, she said gently. Adaeze nodded. About Newi? Yes. If you are serious, we must find a way to raise money. Transport is not free, and the school will expect materials. Adaeze sighed, I have nothing. Not even a pair of decent shoes to walk with. Mama Ifoma set down the calabash and reached into the fold of her wrapper. She brought out a small, worn purse and removed a folded bundle of Naira notes. I've been saving for the roofing sheets, she said. But this can get you started. Adaeze's eyes widened in disbelief. Mama, no. That roof is leaking. You cannot. I can, she said firmly. What use is a roof if the girl beneath it cannot rise? The tears Adaeze had held back came freely now. She held Mama Ifoma's hands tightly. I will pay you back. I swear on Chimamanda's head. You will pay me back by becoming what you are meant to be, the old woman said, smiling through her missing teeth. Later that day, Adaeze took Chimamanda and made her way to the village market. She had one other plan. If she was to survive the travel and school, she had to find something to sell. Her eyes scanned the stalls and eventually settled on a woman roasting groundnuts. Mama Nkechi, she called. The woman looked up. Adaeze. What brings you here? I want to learn how to roast and package groundnuts. I need something I can sell in Newi, even if small. The woman raised an eyebrow. Are you not the girl who went to school at night? Yes. And now I want to teach others. But I need to eat first. Mama Nkechi chuckled. Your mouth is sharp. Good. Come tomorrow morning. We will start. No payment. Just your hands and your time. Adaeze bowed slightly. God bless you. That evening she returned to class and sat next to Aband0ned. You look brighter today, the old woman said. I have a dream now. Be careful, Aband0ned whispered. Dreams are fragile in villages like ours. Yes, Adaeze said, gripping her notebook. But so is a baby bird, until it learns to fly. After class, Sister Justina pulled her aside. You spoke to Mama Ifoma? Yes. I will go to Newi. Even if I must walk there. The nun smiled. There is strength in your steps, Adaeze. But remember, dreams take more than courage. They take consistency. I will give both. That night, under the flickering lantern in their room, Adaeze placed Chimamanda on her lap and wrote again in her notebook. Day 1, I have nothing but hope. But hope is something. I will build a life with these 2 hands. And as the baby cooed and the crickets began their lullaby, Adaeze saw a path in her mind, a dirt road, winding and rough, but leading somewhere real. For the first time in a long time, the future didn't look like a punishment. It looked like promise. The rooster crowed earlier than usual, or so it felt to Adaeze. Her eyes had barely shut before the morning crept in. Chimamanda stirred beside her, stretching her tiny legs and blinking into the pale light that filtered through the cracks in the mud wall. Today was different. Today was the day Adaeze would leave for Newi to begin the teacher training program Sister Justina had told her about. It was just orientation for now, a chance to register and see the school, but it felt like something larger, a door swinging open after years of knocking. She packed Chimamanda's little things into a raffia bag, a faded wrapper, a bottle of boiled water, a piece of biscuit wrapped in nylon. She tied her own hair back, fastened her best wrapper tightly, and adjusted her blouse. There was no mirror in Mama Ifoma's home, but Adaeze didn't need one to know she looked like a mother, and a woman with a mission. As she stepped out of the room, she saw Mama Ifoma waiting with a flask and a folded handkerchief. "Here. Drink some tea before you go," she said. "And take this handkerchief. For sweat. Or tears." Adaeze smiled. "Thank you, Mama. For everything." Mama Ifoma cupped her face gently. "Go and show them the girl that Araephite gave the world." They reached the motor park just after 7 a.m. The sun had begun its slow rise, casting long shadows across the dusty lot. Adaeze clutched Chimamanda with one arm and the raffia bag with the other, her heart pounding at the sight of the rusty, overloaded bus labeled God First Motors. "Where to?" The conductor barked. "Newi. Enter. N500. She hesitated, then pulled out the small wad of notes Mama Ifoma had given her. Handing over the money felt like releasing a part of her soul, but she did it anyway. The ride to Newi was bumpy and hot. Chimamanda cried for a while but eventually fell asleep in Adaeze's arms. The other passengers mostly ignored them, except for one older woman who leaned over and whispered, "You're brave, my dear." Carrying both child and ambition. Adaeze gave a small nod. "Thank you, Ma." When they arrived in Newi, Adaeze stepped down from the bus and looked around. The town was busier, louder, faster than Araephite. Okada riders zoomed past, traders called out from stalls, and the air smelled of petrol and fried akara. She found her way to the small compound where the teacher training was being held. A modest building with cracked walls and faded paint. Inside, a few other women, young and old, sat on wooden benches, holding files and forms. A woman in glasses stepped out from a room with a clipboard. Name: Adaeze Shikodi. She flipped through the papers. "You're on the list. You're late. I came from Araephite." "It's a long road," Adaeze explained. The woman paused, then softened. "Your baby?" "Yes. I'm all she has." "You're early for the meeting. Class doesn't begin for another week, but registration is today. Here, fill this." Adaeze took the form and stared at the questions. She couldn't read everything, but she remembered enough from night school to understand most of it. Carefully, she filled in the blanks, her handwriting crooked but proud. One line caught her eye, next of kin. She paused. Then wrote, "Ifoma Akiki, guardian." When the paperwork was done, the woman smiled at her. "If you work hard, you'll do well here. I have no other choice." As she walked out of the building, Chimamanda now awake and squirming in her wrapper, Adaeze looked at the bright Newi sky. "I will return, my daughter," she whispered. "With more than hope next time. I'll return with knowledge." And in that moment, under the wide blue sky of a strange town, a poor girl from Araephite stood taller than she ever had before. Because sometimes, the first step of a long journey is not the hardest, it's the most beautiful. The return journey to Adaeze was no easier than the trip to Navy. The bus broke down halfway at Aband0ned market, and passengers waited for nearly an hour under the harsh sun while the driver fiddled with the engine. Chimamanda whimpered and clung tightly to Adaeze's chest, sweat soaking through their clothes. Still, Adaeze remained calm. "I know, my love," she whispered, rocking the child gently. "This heat will pass. Everything does." By the time they arrived at the village outskirts, the sun was beginning to set. The golden hue painted the trees in bronze and shadow, and smoke curled into the sky from distant cooking fires. Adaeze made her way home, feet blistered, clothes dusty, but her eyes lit with determination. Mama Ifoma met her at the compound gate. "You're back." Adaeze nodded. "We're in." "In what?" "The program. I'm registered. Class begins next week." Mama Ifoma broke into a slow smile and took Chimamanda into her arms. "Then the work begins." That night, while Adaeze rinsed her wrapper by the backyard well, Aband0ned arrived with her usual calmness and quiet. "I heard from the parish women," she said. "You went to Navy?" "Yes," Adaeze replied, tying the wet wrapper to the line. "Teacher training." "You're serious about this?" "I have no other life left." "This is it." Aband0ned handed her a small brown envelope. "It's not much. But I want you to use it for your next trip." "Or books." Adaeze hesitated. "I can't take it." "You can. Because years ago, I was you. And someone helped me." That night, after everyone had gone to sleep, Adaeze sat alone with the oil lamp flickering on the wall. She opened the envelope, 3,000 in small notes. It felt like a treasure. She began to write again in her notebook. "Day 2, I am not alone. I thought I was, but today proved me wrong. Even in this village of whispers and wounds, hearts still beat with kindness." The next morning she rose early. Chimamanda was still asleep, her thumb in her mouth. Adaeze boiled water, washed their clothes, then wrapped a headscarf and left to meet Mama Nkechi at the market. True to her word, the woman had prepared the coals and spread out the raw groundnuts. "Take this tray," she said. "Stir them gently. Not too fast or they'll burn." Adaeze knelt beside her and watched closely, mimicking her movements. She learned how to add salt water at just the right time, how to blow away the husks, and how to measure by bottle cap when selling to passers-by. By afternoon, she had filled her first small nylon bags. 10 of them. It was a small start, but her heart swelled as though she had baked bread for kings. "These will sell in Navy," Mama Nkechi said. "Students love groundnuts. Make sure to smile when you sell. People pay more for joy." "Thank you. I'll never forget this." "No need," the woman said. "Just rise. That's all the thanks I need." As she walked home with her tray of roasted nuts, children ran past her in the dust, laughing and kicking an old football. She smiled, remembering the days she too had run barefoot, before life cornered her into silence. That evening, she placed the small tray by the door of the hut and sat beside Chimamanda, who was gurgling and trying to pull off her own wrapper. "You'll go to school one day," Adaeze said softly. "Not like me. You won't wait until the world breaks you." Then she added with a voice that was both prayer and promise. "And I'll be there to clap for you. I swear it." In Adaeze, dreams rarely came easy. But when they did, they were earned with tears, stubbornness, and the fire of a mother's love. A week passed in a blur of heat, noise, and endless movement. Adaeze found herself waking earlier and sleeping later, balancing baby care, house chores, her new groundnut roasting lessons, and preparation for her first official teacher training session in Navy. But something was beginning to crack, not in her spirit but in her body. It started with a constant ache in her back, then a dizziness that came in waves. One evening, as she was packaging roasted groundnuts under the dim lantern, she dropped a handful and leaned against the mud wall, breathless. Mama Ifoma noticed. Adaeze, she said cautiously, when last did you rest? Adaeze smiled weakly. I'm fine. Just tired. Your eyes say something else. Have you eaten since morning? She hesitated. Pap, she finally whispered. Only pap. Mama Ifoma's voice rose. This girl, are you trying to teach? You think the strength you're using will not demand its payment? Adaeze sat down on the stool slowly. Mama, if I rest, who will carry this dream for me? Who? Mama Ifoma softened then, walking over to her and placing a palm on her forehead. You're hot. You're burning like a coal pot. I'm okay. You are not. And you will not go to Newi tomorrow. Adaeze looked up sharply. Mama, please. It's the first real class. I can't miss it. You will go next week. Today, you will eat yam and lie down. But what of the money I've spent? The groundnuts. What if they mark me as unserious? They will not. And if they do, you will explain. But first you must live, Adaeze. What is the point of chasing a future if you can't before you reach it? Adaeze blinked tears into her lap. I'm afraid to pause. If I stop, I might lose the fire. No, Mama Ifoma said softly, kneeling beside her. You will not lose it. You are the fire. That night, Adaeze reluctantly ate yam and oil, then curled next to Chimamanda under the raffia mat. She felt her heartbeat slowing, her breathing calming. But her mind raced. In her notebook, she wrote, Day 8, today I learned that strength isn't always in motion. Sometimes, strength is knowing when to stop, when to breathe, when to allow others to carry you, even for a moment. The next morning, she woke with renewed clarity. Though still weak, she felt lighter. Chimamanda giggled beside her, poking her chin. Adaeze laughed for the first time in days. By afternoon, Sister Justina arrived unannounced. She entered the compound and spotted Adaeze under the mango tree. I heard from one of the Newi teachers that you didn't come, she said. I wanted to be sure you're all right. Adaeze explained everything, the long days, the roasting, the dizziness. Sister Justina nodded. That's the danger of being too strong. People forget you're human. I just want to rise, sister. And you will. But even a bird must rest between flights. She handed Adaeze a small bottle of multivitamins and a sachet of milk powder. Take this. Your body must carry your dream, not collapse beneath it. As the nun turned to leave, she added, You've impressed everyone already. Don't think one absence will erase your worth. Just return when you're well. That evening, Adaeze sat again with Mama Ifoma, watching the sky shift from orange to deep purple. Mama, she said, when you were younger, did you ever have a dream? Mama Ifoma stared into the distance. Yes. I wanted to be a tailor in Onitsha. I even sewed wrappers for village women. But then my husband. The children came. The market burned. One by one, my dreams wore away like an old cloth. Adaeze took her hand gently. I will sew you a dress one day. When I'm a teacher. I'd like that, Mama Ifoma said, smiling. And in the stillness of the twilight, 2 generations of women, one who gave up her dream, and one who refused to, sat quietly, bound by love, loss, and a determination that no illness could erase. The sky over Oreifite had been heavy for days. Thick, grey clouds loomed like ancient spirits warning of a storm. When the rain finally came, it came without mercy, sheets of water pounding roofs, flooding paths, turning red earth into streams of mud. Adaeze stood by the doorway of Mama Ifoma's hut, watching helplessly as water soaked her small tray of groundnuts she had forgotten outside. Chimamanda stirred uneasily in her back, irritated by the sudden chill that blew into the room. No, 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 Adaeze muttered, running out barefoot to rescue the tray. She slipped once, staining her wrapper with mud, but gathered what she could and brought it back inside. Mama Ifoma sighed, shaking her head. This rain. It does not know mercy. I lost at least half of what I prepared yesterday, Adaeze said, voice tight. That was supposed to be my fare for Monday. It's not your fault, Mama Ifoma replied. Rain comes when it wants. It doesn't ask permission. But to Adaeze, it felt like everything in the world demanded payment she couldn't afford. Rain, time, hunger, even dreams. The next morning, she tried to salvage what remained of the nuts. Some had become too soggy, others had grown moldy. She picked through them, silently praying that at least a few bags could still be sold. She wrapped Chimamanda tightly and walked to the roadside market with a smaller tray than usual. The mud squelched beneath her slippers. Other women were already there, setting up canopies and benches, most of them grumbling about ruined produce and falling sales. Adaeze, one woman called. You look tired. She smiled weakly. The rain took half my night. It took my plantains and my sleep. They shared a dry laugh. By noon, she had sold only 2 bags. Her stomach growled, but she ignored it. She couldn't eat if Chimamanda didn't have enough pap left for the evening. Then, just as she was about to give up for the day, a young man walked up to her stand. His shirt was soaked and stained, but he carried a large folder under one arm. Are you Adaeze Shikodi? He asked. Yes. She replied cautiously. I've been sent from the training center. Mr. Okonkwo asked me to find you. You weren't in class today. Her mouth fell open. I couldn't afford transport. He said I should tell you that there's a small scholarship fund. He wants you to apply. He believes in you. Adaeze was stunned. Why? Why would he do that? The man shrugged. He says students like you are rare. That you see the classroom not just as a job, but as a calling. Her eyes filled with tears. She wiped them quickly, not wanting to appear weak. I'll come tomorrow, she said. I will apply. As he turned to leave, he glanced at her tray. These your groundnuts look good, by the way. I'll take 3 bags. She stared at him, stunned. 3? Yes, he smiled. And I don't even eat them that often. She wrapped them up and handed them over, whispering, thank you. I mean it. Later that evening, Adaeze returned home and told Mama Ifoma everything. The old woman listened, her face unreadable until the end. God sees, my daughter, she finally said. And sometimes, he sends rain to wash away what will spoil your harvest, not ruin it. That night, Adaeze sat on the mat, Chimamanda asleep in the crook of her arm. She opened her notebook. Day 19, today, the rain washed away my profits. But it brought something better. Hope. The kind that arrives on muddy feet and carries a scholarship form. Maybe this journey is not mine alone. Maybe I am being carried too. She closed the book, kissed her daughter's forehead, and smiled into the darkness. The morning sun peeked through the palm fronds, drying the last of the puddles from the night's rain. Adaeze woke early, her heart thudding with anticipation. Today, she would go back to Newi, not just for class, but to apply for the scholarship that could change everything. She dressed in her cleanest wrapper, the blue one with faded yellow flowers, and tied Chimamanda to her back. Mama Ifoma handed her a small nylon bag with water and roasted yam wrapped in leaves. Eat, no matter what. You need strength, she said firmly. I will, Adaeze promised. At the bus stop, she waited under the neem tree, watching as traders loaded vegetables and fruits into sacks. The same bus conductor from her first trip saw her and smiled. You again. Always with that baby on your back. She's my reason, Adaeze said, lifting her chin. The ride to Newi was bumpy, but her thoughts drowned out the noise. What if they refuse me? What if they ask for documents I can't find? At the training center, she was directed to a small office beside the main classroom. Inside, Mr. Okonkwo sat behind a desk, surrounded by books and a small fan blowing warm air. "You made it," he said without looking up. "Yes, sir." He motioned to a chair. "Sit." Adaeze settled, adjusting Chimamanda, who had begun to fuss. "Here," he handed her a thin form. "It's simple. Fill your name, background, and why you want the scholarship." Her hand trembled as she took the pen. She hadn't written a full paragraph since secondary school. She stared at the space marked "your reason" for several seconds before placing the pen down. "Sir, may I speak instead?" Mr. Okonkwo looked up. "Speak." Adaeze took a deep breath. "When I was in school, I loved books. But after my father died, everything stopped. Then I met a man. He promised me the world and left me with a child. People said it was the end. But I wanted to be my beginning." He didn't interrupt. "I roast groundnuts to pay my fare. I study at night when my baby sleeps. I come here not because I want a job, but because I want to give children what I never had, a teacher who believes in them." Mr. Okonkwo leaned back in his chair, eyes soft. "That is enough." He reached into his drawer, pulled out a blue stamp, and pressed it on the bottom of the form. "Approved. Come early next week. You'll get a small allowance every 2 weeks for transport and materials." Adaeze could barely speak. "Thank you, sir." "God bless you, sir." As she turned to leave, he said, "You've got a fire in you, Adaeze. Don't let the wind put it out." On her way out, she passed the woman with glasses, the one who had watched her struggle on her first day. This time, the woman smiled and nodded. It felt like a victory. Outside, she sat under a mango tree and fed Chimamanda bits of yam. The breeze carried the sounds of honking buses and hawkers selling gala and soft drinks. But inside her, everything was quiet. Peaceful. Back in Oreifite that evening, Mama Ifoma listened with tears in her eyes. "You did it, Nwam. You've opened the door." Adaeze smiled. "Now I will walk through it." That night, she wrote, "Day 20, today, a paper and a signature changed my life. Not because they gave me money, but because they gave me belief. Someone believes in me. And maybe now, I believe too." She kissed Chimamanda's head and whispered, "We're going somewhere, my love. And we won't stop." The following week began with quiet strength. Adaeze woke up early, not with dread, but with purpose. She had a new sense of rhythm now, studying in the evenings, preparing groundnuts in smaller batches, and traveling to Newi twice a week for her teacher training. Her steps were surer. Even Chimamanda seemed calmer, like she, too, sensed that something had shifted. But one afternoon, as she returned from class, something unexpected happened. She was walking down the red path that curved behind the Catholic church, humming a lullaby as Chimamanda slept on her back. Then she heard it. "Adaeze." She froze. The voice came again, softer this time. "Adaeze." She turned and her heart stopped. It was Ekena. He stood a few feet away, dressed in a wrinkled shirt and dusty trousers, his eyes duller than she remembered. Time had not been kind to him. He looked thinner, older, like a man who had run too fast and lost his way. "Ekena," she whispered, her throat tight. He stepped closer. "You look well. And she's beautiful." Adaeze didn't move. "What are you doing here?" she asked, her voice firm. "I came back last week. I heard you've been going to Newi. That you're in some teacher training program. I wanted to see you." Her body stiffened. "You wanted to see me?" she repeated bitterly. "Now. After all this time." "I was scared, Adaeze," he said, lowering his gaze. "I didn't know how to be a father. I thought I could fix my life first, then come back. I didn't expect." "You didn't expect me to survive," she cut in. "You thought I would fall apart, cry myself into nothingness." "No, Ekena, I begged you. When I told you I was pregnant, I begged you. And you vanished. I'm sorry. She shook her head slowly. That word, sorry, doesn't feed a child. It doesn't pay fare to Nawi. It doesn't dry tears at night when there's no light or food. He stood silent, ashamed. After a moment, she exhaled. I'm not here to curse you, Ekena. I don't hate you. In fact, I thank you. His eyes widened. Because if you hadn't left, maybe I would never have found out what I'm capable of. Maybe I would still be waiting for someone to save me. A breeze blew through the trees. Chimamanda stirred slightly. She's named Chimamanda, Adaeze said. It means my God will not fail me. It's a beautiful name, Ekena murmured. Adaeze gave a small nod. Yes. And she carries it with pride. He stepped forward, unsure. Can I hold her? Adaeze took a step back. Not today, she said quietly. Maybe one day. But not today. She doesn't need confusion. She needs clarity. Ekena nodded slowly. I understand. She turned to go but paused. If you truly want to be part of her life, don't come with empty words. Come with proof. Until then, we are fine on our own. As she walked away, tears welled in her eyes, not from pain, but from power. She had spoken her truth and stood her ground. That night, she told Mama Ifoma everything. The older woman listened, then placed her hand on Adaeze's. You have grown wings, my daughter. Adaeze looked at Chimamanda asleep beside her and whispered, Not just wings, Mama. I've grown roots too. Later she wrote. Day 21, today, the past came knocking. But I didn't let it in. I spoke not as a broken girl, but as a mother, a student, a woman who is rising. I have a name. And it is not shame. It is Adaeze, daughter of grace. And as the night wind rustled the leaves outside, a mother and her child slept soundly, knowing the future was finally theirs to claim. Oreophyte was buzzing with whispers by the end of that week. People had seen Adaeze returning from Nawi, with books in her hand and confidence in her step. Some said she had become proud. Others said she was wasting her time. What job would she get with just teacher training, and a baby always strapped to her back? But Adaeze had stopped listening to village talk. Instead, she focused on what mattered, finishing her training and giving Chimamanda a future that smelled of possibilities, not pity. One morning, after completing a class on phonics and early childhood engagement, Mr. Okonkwo handed out a flyer. This, he said, is an opportunity. One of you will be selected for a 1-month internship in a private primary school in Nawi. It's unpaid but highly competitive. You'll gain experience and possibly a recommendation letter. A quiet murmur spread through the class. Adaeze stared at the flyer. Just one person? Yes. We will choose based on a teaching demo next week. After class, she stayed behind and walked up to Mr. Okonkwo. Sir, I want to try. He looked up at her, mildly surprised. You're not intimidated? I've taught myself how to survive. I can teach children how to spell, she said simply. He chuckled softly. Spoken like someone who has owl-read.